called modality or type of sensation is specific to that receptor regardless of the method of stimulation. For example, rods and cones, these receptors are sensitive to light waves, whereas auditory receptors they are more sensitive to sound waves. Okay, let's see in the picture. For specificity, in the palm, you can see here the sensations are perceived by the cerebral cortex, okay, and receptors are present on the palm. There are many sensations like pressure, touch, pain, cold. Here the stimulus is ice bag. The person has touched the ice bag, so cold perception is perceived by the cerebral cortex. Okay. Similarly, by the use of pin, okay, stimulus is pin. So now the pain receptors will receive the sensation. Okay, they will receive, and the analysis will be done by the cerebral cortex. Okay, so this is what is the specificity. For pain stimulus, there is pain perception. Okay. Similarly, you can see this is the tract. This is low temperature or cold stimulus. How is it carried? It is carried by the receptors will receive the sensation and send it through the dorsal root ganglia, then to the dorsal, then it goes to this is first order neuron. Okay, the impulses then go to the lateral spinothalamic tract. I hope you know pain and temperature, both sensations are carried by lateral spinothalamic tract. Okay, then it is carried to the higher center and then to the thalamus and then to the primary somatosensory area of cerebral cortex. Okay, so cold sensation, when there is cold stimulus, we get cold sensation. This is the specificity. Similarly, when we give painful stimuli, the receptor for pain is there, and the impulses from first order neuron, the impulses then go through the second order neuron. The second order neuron is the lateral spinothalamic tract, and it carries the impulses to the higher center, to thalamus, and then to the cerebral cortex. Okay, so it is the ascending tracts, because this is a sensory system. It is carrying the pain sensation. So when there is painful stimuli, there is pain sensation is felt. This is what is specificity. After that, let's talk about specificity. After specificity, let's talk about excitability. The ability of the receptors to respond to the adequate stimuli is called excitability. We need to know the mechanism. The mechanism is receptor potential. The receptor potential can be by partial depolarization in most of the receptors, but in some receptors, like in cases of photoreceptors, rods and cones, hyperpolarization acts as a receptor potential. Okay, in most of the cells, it is partial depolarization. That is what causes the receptor potential. But in case of photoreceptors, rods and cones, there is hyperpolarization which causes receptor potential. Okay, so excitability depends on it. The receptor potential or generator potential, it is a potential change that occurs in the receptors on adequate stimulation. It is usually in the form of partial depolarization. Okay, are you understanding? Receptor potential, the mechanism is, it differs according to the type of receptor. In mechanoreceptors, it is caused by deformation of receptor, and when there is deformation of the receptor, it opens the ion channels. This is better studied in Pacinian corpuscles due to easily stimulated by microglass rods and large in size and easily dissected. Okay, you can see in the picture. See here, this is the Pacinian corpuscle. When the pressure stimulus is given, it gets deformed, and then the sensation is perceived. Pressure stimulus is perceived. Now coming to receptor potential mechanism, Pacinian corpuscles consist of central nerve terminal, and capsule of connective tissue consist of several concentric layers which are onion-like, isn't it? You see, it consists of several concentric layers of the connective tissue, and centrally there is nerve ending. Okay, so this is, we are talking about the Pacinian corpuscle. Let's see what happens is, unmyelinated nerve fiber is present at the center. You see, this is the receptor or transducer region. Then this is the capsule of concentric layers, and this is the first node of Ranvier, spike generation region, this one. Okay, and then the impulses are transmitted. The same, you can see the stimulus has come, there is deformation. Okay, now the depolarization is occurring, the sodium influx will occur, and the impulses will be transmitted. Let's see how it happens. See, when there is deformation, stimulus is there, electrotonic current is there, myelinated, so it jumps from one node of Ranvier to another. Receptor potential is there is action potential generated. Okay, the same thing you can see, when there is deformed area, receptor potential is created and action potential is created. From one node of Ranvier to another node of Ranvier, impulse is transmitted. Okay, so receptor potential is the properties of generator potential are the amplitude. Okay, amplitude is one of the properties. You can see there is resting membrane potential, it reaches the threshold, then there is receptor potential and action potentials are generated. Receptor potential amplitude is graded. That is, it does not obey all or none rule. That is, it is directly proportional with stimulus intensity. Okay, if the stimulus has crossed the threshold level, then only action potential will be developed. Okay, you can see the same, low intensity, moderate intensity, high intensity, the same thing in a different form. It is not followed by absolute refractory period. It can be summated by temporal or spatial summation. You see here, receptor potential, duration of generator potential is 5 millisecond. That is longer than the duration of the action potential. See here, the stimulus is there, the afferent neuron or the sensory neuron is there, it carries the impulses to central nervous system. Okay, then we can see here, when we apply another stimulus, chemical stimulus, cocaine, and there is no action potential. The receptor potential is there, but it is not adequate enough to create an action potential. There are two scientists, two renowned scientists, Weber and Fechner. They gave a law which is known as Weber-Fechner law. Okay, and that explains the rate of discharge. We are talking today about the properties of receptors. The first property was specificity, second was excitability, and the third one is rate of discharge. So rate of discharge, it is mainly based on Weber-Fechner law. The rate of impulse discharged from a receptor is directly proportional with the log intensity of the stimulus. This is R equals to log S into K. R equals to rate of impulse discharge, S is strength of the stimulus, and K is a constant. So rate of discharge mainly based on Weber-Fechner law. So 100-fold increase in intensity leads to only 2-fold increase in frequency of impulses. So receptors compress marked changes in stimulus intensity into smaller changes in frequency of action potential. Compression function of receptor. See this graph. Here there is log intensity of stimulus and there is rate of impulse discharge. Then the fourth one is adaptation. The fourth property that we need to study is about adaptation. So before that, we have rate of discharge. We should know that when there is increase in the intensity of the stimulus, there is increase in the rate of discharge by two means. One is by increasing the rate of discharge from each receptor. Another is by increasing the number of excited receptors, that is recruitment of receptors. Okay, you can see in this picture the stimulus has come. Now there is deformation, the action potentials occurring, and then when the stimulus is bigger, when the stimulus is small, there is you can see the graph here, the action potential, it is also small. But when the stimulus is strong, then the rate of discharge of action potential is also more. You can see when there is weak stimulus on the skin, only 4 nerve terminals are activated. But when there is strong stimulus, there is all the nerve terminals are activated. Okay, so this is regarding the rate of discharge. Now coming to the fourth property, that is adaptation. Adaptation, there is decline or decrease in the rate of discharge from the receptors in spite of prolonged constant stimulation. Decline or decrease in the rate of discharge from the receptors in spite of prolonged constant stimulation. Types of receptors according to the speed or rate of adaptation. There are two types of receptor. One is slowly adapting tonic receptor, another is rapidly adapting phasic receptor. What are they? Depending upon whether they are, depending upon the rate or speed of adaptation, the receptors are divided into slowly adapting or tonic receptor, another is rapidly adapting phasic receptor. Okay, so what are they? Let's see. Rate of impulse discharge. Rapidly adapting receptors, you see they are phasic. Slowly adapting receptors, they follow this kind of curve. So rapidly adapting or phasic receptors, they start discharge at a high rate. Then discharge decreases rapidly and even stops within short period of time. Okay, rapidly adapting phasic receptors, they start discharge at a high rate, then the discharge decreases rapidly and even stops within short period of time. Examples में tactile receptors as hair follicle, Meissner's and Pacinian corpuscles in skin. Some mechanoreceptors in the joints also. They are also phasic receptors. Okay. The importance of adaptation is they inform the CNS about the onset of stimulus, about the termination of stimulation, and about the change in intensity of the stimulus. Okay. After that, we need to know that there is another type of receptor which is called slowly adapting receptor or tonic receptor. What happens? Receptors, they continuously discharge, the receptors continue to discharge impulses even though at a low rate as long as the stimulus is applied. Okay, they continue to discharge impulses even though it may be at low rate, discharging the stimulus at low rate, but the stimulus keeps on discharging as long as the stimulus is applied. Okay, it continues to discharge the impulses as long as the stimulus is applied. Examples are pain receptors, mechanoreceptors. In mechanoreceptors, examples are MS means muscle spindle. Okay, muscle spindle, Golgi tendon receptors. Another example of tonic receptors are arterial baroreceptors, cold receptors, and chemoreceptors in aortic and carotid body. Okay, the significance of adaptation is that they maintain sensory information, so they subserve vital functions. For example, arterial baroreceptors, they help in regulation of arterial blood pressure and heart rate. Muscle spindles and joint receptors, they help in maintenance of the body posture and equilibrium. Pain receptors, they initiate protective mechanism. So students, are you listening? The slide is being changed or it is stuck somewhere.
It is
Is the
changing,
slide
ma'am.
देखे कुछ हाँ
देख ही रहा था मैम.
देख ही रहा था. So today we talked about the properties of the receptor. First, what I'm trying to recapitulate. Okay, the first thing that we did is we studied about what is receptor. Receptor is the biological transducer which converts any form of energy into action potential. Okay, so here in today's class we studied that there are many properties of the receptor, but the main properties are the ones that we talked today are excitability, specificity. The first one, specificity. If there is a specific sensation being felt, specific sensation will be perceived by the cerebral cortex. Okay, specificity. Then we studied about excitability. Okay, then we studied about excitability. Most of the receptors they get excited by, they are activated by partial depolarization, but photoreceptors, rods and cones, they are stimulated by hyperpolarization. Then we talked about receptor potential. Okay, and we took the example of Pacinian corpuscles. They get stimulated when they are deformed. And the Pacinian corpuscle, it consists of the free nerve ending and it is surrounded by concentric, CT means connective tissues. Okay, and what happens? See, the impulses are transmitted from this region from one node of Ranvier to another, which is called saltatory conduction, isn't it? Then we studied the third property. Which is the rate of discharge, which is based on the honor of two scientists, the law given by the two scientists, that is Weber and Fechner. These were the great scientists who gave this law. And Weber-Fechner law says that the rate of impulse discharge from a receptor is directly proportional with the log intensity of the stimulus. R equals to log S into K, where R equals to rate of impulse discharge and S equals to strength of stimulus. K is constant. Okay. Then after rate of discharge, we should know that if the intensity of stimulus is increased, it increases the rate of discharge. Okay, by two means. How? One is by increasing the rate of discharge from each receptor, another is by increasing the number of excited receptors or recruitment of receptors. Okay. Then the fourth one that we studied, the fourth character, the fourth property that we studied is adaptation. The third one that we had studied, see, if the intensity, if the stimulus is weak, there will be less transmission of the impulse. If the stimulus is strong, there will be more transmission of impulse. Okay. Now the fourth character that we studied, the property that we studied is adaptation. According to the speed or rate of adaptation, receptors can be slowly adapting or rapidly adapting. Slowly adapting are also known as tonic receptor, and rapidly adapting are also known as phasic receptors. Okay. Then we studied about the examples of phasic receptors, the mechanoreceptors in the joints, Pacinian corpuscles in the skin, tactile receptors as hair follicle, Meissner's corpuscles. Okay, these are the examples. Then the example of tonic receptors, slowly adapting or tonic receptors are pain receptors. The mechanoreceptors like the muscle spindle, Golgi tendon receptors, arterial baroreceptors, okay, cold receptors, chemoreceptors in aortic and carotid body. So these are the main properties. There are many other properties also of the receptor. So could you follow class? Could you follow what I taught you today?
Yes, ma'am.
Attendance sheet download गर्न खोजेको. I don't know whether it got downloaded or not. So this much we will talk today.